Hello Geeks and Gamers, Matt Lemke here with Through Gamer Goggles, gamer-goggles.com. This is a preview on the game 1919, The Noble Experiment by Black Monk Games. It's a card game for 2 to 4 players. It takes about 45 minutes to play. The goal of the game is to gather as many prestige points as possible, and you do this by buying different ingredients, purchasing different ingredients, and distilling different types of spirits. There are a few different things in the game that make it interesting that create certain twists. For example, there is a mayor that can either be a law-abiding citizen or political official or a bribed political official. So, depending on how you want to play the game, there's room for intrigue and backstabbing. A lot of it has to do with strategic planning. Hello, Gamers, Matt Lemke here with Your Gamer Goggles, gamer-goggles.com, and today this is the last portion of our preview for the new game 1919, The Noble Experiment from Black Monk. As you can see, the board is set up. We're going to make one modification to this board. A regular game requires that you use 6 of each locale, but since we are doing a demo version, we're going to remove half of them to speed up the gameplay. This is just a demo to give you a point. I'm hoping that this speeds it up enough that this is 15 to 20 minutes long. Tops. So, first thing you do is after setting up the board, is you move to giving each player their hand. But even before that, I'm going to make a note. There's 3 phases in 1919. And the first phase is the preparation phase, which effectively you have already done and prepared everything because you've set up the board. So you skip that phase in the game. The second phase is hiring workers. You also skip that phase the first turn of the game because of the way the hands are dealt. Now, with that being said, we're going to take these cards off here and these cards here, and we're going to grab another board to put on here so I can zoom in, and I'm going to show you sample hands. First player is the person who most recently watched a mob film. He gets 3 Mike Mellon cards and the mayor with the good side up. As I mentioned before, all the cards are 2-sided. This is the corrupt version. This is the good version of the mayor. And then he gets 5 ingredients cards. 5. And he gets, wow, not the world's greatest hand for him, but it is decent enough that he'll have some really good first turn options out of it. He has 4 barley and a water. Now the hands are going to be off screen. Now the second player, which in this case is the last player, the second player would normally get 4 worker cards and 5 ingredients cards. But since it's a 2-player game, the last player gets an additional card for the ingredients. Let's see what he has. Or what I have, since I'm the only one playing the game. Well, he's got a pretty good hand, actually. He's got 2 water, a rye, and 3 maize. Both these guys have a pretty aggressive hand. So, now you enter the city phase. And during the city phase, you go back and forth until you've expended, effectively, all of your workers, or not all of your workers, until one player has expended all the workers on the table. Now, real quick, we're going to review the areas of the board. We have our reserved locales, our active locales, mixing plant, bottling plant, marketplace, black market, the distilleries, and the market. And over here you have your distilled liquors and your bottled liquors. And the ingredients pile here. So, the first player has the 4 barley and a water. He can clearly make either the Irish whiskey or the Scotch. So, here's what we're going to do. He's going to go ahead and he's going to take a look here at these different locales, and we'll pop it up on the board and zoom in. Actually, no. he's going to go ahead and take a look at the different locales and see what he might need. So, in order to try and score this round, Scotch, bourbon are bourbon and bourbon. Bourbon is all over the place on this turn. Bourbon, bourbon, blended whiskeys times 2. Any 2 whiskeys, a blended or a bourbon. So he's going to go ahead and he looks at what he can do, and he can buy the Scotch or the Irish whiskey. It doesn't really matter. They both appear only once. He's going to go ahead and buy the Scotch because it's actually on 2 different cards, so it makes his play more versatile. So in order to purchase this, he's going to discard 1 worker, 2 barley, 1 water, and 1 cash to pay for the use of the building. The worker also helps pay for that use. And then this card gets flipped over because it's been activated. Anybody else who wants to make Scotch this turn has to pay an additional 1 from the original cost. Now the player will get some distilled Scotch, and that goes in their playing area in front of them, face up. All the workers are placed face up. Then that action is completed. It passes to the second player of the turn. And the second player has 4 workers, like we mentioned before. He has 3 maize, 2 water, and a rye. So, well, he looks at it. Bourbon's on every card. So he's going to go ahead and he's going to buy bourbon straight up. He's not going to waste any time. He's going to discard a worker. He's going to pay 1 with his extra maize. He's going to meet the 2 ingredient requirements for the maize and the water. This card is activated. He gets the bourbon, which in the finished copy of the game will be Canadian whiskey. And these cards go to the appropriate discard pile. Now I'm going to zoom out here for a second. I want to show you how I discard. I discard with these cards with the face up, just so I don't mix up the piles. There's no rule as to how you do it. You can even put them on the bottom because at the beginning of the preparation phase, they're going to get shuffled anyway. Now it goes back to player 1's turn, who can do a few different things here. He can visit the marketplace. He does not have a financer, so it won't really help him. If you look at the marketplace, there's 1, 2, 3 barley, 2 rye, a water, and 1 maize. He can take, when you use the market, you can take all of the same type of ingredient or any 2. Also, when you use the marketplace, you discard a card, an ingredient card. Well, you don't discard. You give it an ingredient card to your opponent, who then has to discard 1 card that they have in their hand prior to receiving that ingredient card. So, he is going to actually use the mayor, who has a special ability. We'll zoom in for the mayor's special ability real quick. Player with the most bottled whiskey has to choose 1 and discard it. In this case, no players actually have discarded whiskey, so it's not going to be relevant to the situation. But when you play the mayor after the end of the activation, he becomes, actually he's going to use the black market. He becomes activated and his ability triggers. We're using the building here. Discarding the mayor, well, you don't actually discard the mayor. he goes on top of the building is now shut down. If anybody wants to use the black market, they have to pay an extra 2 to do so. And what he does, the black market allows him to take the top 3 cards from the ingredients pile, which is really pretty good for him. It's 2 water and a barley. Now, the player actually has still has 2 workers left, so there's a minimum of 2 actions left in this round. Now it goes to player 2. Player 2 only has left in his hand water and rye. He really can't do much of anything. He could bottle his 1 bottle, go for one for one, and bottle it, and then he can attempt to get prestige points in the next turn. And actually, you know, since we're playing a short game, we're going to go ahead and do that. He is going to go ahead and we're going to use the bottling plant. In order to use the bottling plant, you have the different costs for different amounts of whiskey that you can bottle at a time. And when I say whiskey, I mean distilled whiskey. So he's going to spend the 1, and he's going to discard a worker because he's using a building. The building is now activated. It will flip over. Discard the appropriate cards. His bottle of bourbon becomes bottled bourbon. Had he have waited to use the mayor, he would have been forced to discard this bottle, but he didn't wait. The mayor is also like hot potato, which maybe we'll get to see that here in a short while. Now it is player 2's activation. Player 2 actually has the ability to do the same thing. He has the ability to activate and use it, bottle his scotch, but he's going to wait. He is going to shoot to maybe, well, he actually has the ability to make Irish whiskey. If that's what he wants to do. And we'll go ahead and we'll do that. He's going to go ahead and make Irish whiskey. He needs 4 cards to do it. The 4 cards he's going to use are the 2 ingredients cards, which are barley, to meet the ingredient requirement on 1 water. He's going to use the 2 for cash to meet the 1. He doesn't get any change back from this because when you use ingredients as cash, you don't get any change. And he has to discard a worker, so he's going to discard a Mike Mellon to it. This will become activated. He now has distilled Irish whiskey. Next action goes to player 2, who has 2 workers, 1 water ingredient, and bottled bourbon. So he's going to go ahead and press the game. He's going to press forward, and what he's going to do is he is going to purchase or deliver bottled bourbon to this locale for the prestige points. It's a level 1 locale. He needs a bottle of bourbon, 1 and a discarded worker, or 1 discarded driver worker, which is Mike Mellon. Mike Mellon's a great card. Bottle goes back to the distillery or the distilled pile. He then gets this locale, which we're going to zoom out just a hair so you can see them all. Notice that this is vacant. It will remain vacant until the preparation phase. Zoom back in so I can show you the prestige points. We're going to zoom way in actually. He sold bourbon or delivered bourbon to this bar, this locale, so he has 3 prestige points. It goes off to the side. It goes off to the side like this because sometimes, for example, this one is worth 6 points and this side's worth 4 points. You always put the side that you purchased to the high end and you stack them like this. So that way at the end of the game it's easy to add up. Play will then pass to player 1. Player 1 has no ingredients cards, but he has a Mike Mellon. So what he's going to do is he knows that the end of the turn's coming up, so what he wants to do is stock up. He has nothing to pass to his opponent to make his opponent discard anything, so he can't do that. he ends up with 3 barley. This gets replenished. The player 2 sees that this is a good opportunity to stock up on some ingredients from the market, which we're going to zoom out so you can see the market. Right about there. He's going to grab the 3 water. He has 1 water in his hand. That is the only ingredient. He must pass that to his opponent. His opponent will then discard 1 maize. 1 barley. And we replenish the market. He doesn't really have the ability to do anything with what he has. He can spend all of this to visit the bottling plant, discarding his worker, ending the turn, and start the turn with 2 bottles of whiskey. But if he does that, he will have no ingredients and no cash to hire any workers, and everybody will be at a 0. They'll all be free workers. So he's not going to do that. He's going to go ahead and spend his action and grab the 3 rye. He's going to discard or pass 1 of the barley to his opponent. His opponent only has water, must discard 1 of those. We replenish. With only having 3 ingredients cards in hand, he's going to follow suit. He's going to do the same thing. He's going to shoot to grab all the barley. He wants to keep the water, so he's going to pass the same barley that his opponent just passed him. And his opponent has to choose what to discard. And his opponent's going to discard 1 of the rye that was in his hand. Now, it is player 2's turn. Player 2 has a decent amount of ingredients. He's going to go ahead and grab the mayor. He's going to bribe him by paying 2. He's going to spend 1 to use the market and discard his driver, Mike Mellon. That purchases the mayor. The mayor will then go in his worker area or in front of the active player sideways like this until the end of the city phase. The mayor can't be activated twice in the same turn, and that's why they have him sideways. And then you take 3 cards from the ingredient pile and they go into your hand. And he ends up with these 3 ingredients. So he actually did well. He traded 3 cards for 3 cards and ended up with the mayor, which makes him first player next turn, which could be very crucial. So that ends the city phase. At the end of the city phase, the opponent who has the mayor and their side chooses whether the mayor is the good mayor or the bad mayor. This guy is going to choose the corrupt mayor. He can't be discarded. Then we go to the preparation phase. So we're going to zoom out for that. Oops. During the preparation phase, oops, there should have been 1 more here, sorry. It wouldn't have changed what they did because I just missed it. During the preparation phase, all building cards that have the dark border up get flipped over and reset. This is basically a resetting phase. If there's any local cards left, they get flipped over. These are your clock, effectively. These are your timer, your countdown timer in the game that ends it. And any empty spots get flipped here. When you get to a spot where there's 2 empty slots and you can't fill these slots, the game ends. Okay, so now you enter the hiring phase. Player 1. Player 1 is the mayor. Player 2 is over here. You grab your freshly shuffled oops, I mix them up again. I do this all the time. Your freshly shuffled workers. And player 1 draws 2 workers. Player 1 then chooses which workers he would like to hire. He's going to no-brain it, and he's going to hire this guy because he gives you an extra ability. He gives you an extra action. So he's going to pay 1. Then this worker card passes to player 2. He draws a card, or she, and he looks at the abilities and decides whether or not he wants to buy either of these. These are both pretty interesting cards. Has a Moonshiner and a Financer. Moonshiners lower the cost of working at the bottling plant, and I have to look. And the mixing plant. So he's pretty good. He also has a really good ability. So he is actually going to go ahead and pay the 2 for that worker. 2 on the blue, which is 1. Then player 1 draws a card. Wow, Alex is pretty good because he lets you produce water or whiskey without using water. He's not as good as the other 3-cost guy, but he is pretty good. So he's going to go ahead and he's going to get bought with these 2 cards. This worker passes to this one. Now, Floyd is a 0-costing worker who says a chosen opponent has to either discard a bottle of whiskey or pay 5. So he's going to go ahead and take him. He's a great defensive card. Passes over to player 1. Player 1 draws a card. He ends up with a Financer, who is Frank Stone. He's going to go ahead and pay the 2 for Frank Stone. He has 4 workers. He is effectively done hiring people. So he goes ahead and he draws a card, and he likes Joe Redneck. So he's going to take Joe Redneck. The other card will get discarded. He's going to pay the cost of 1. He's going to pay it with the... Yeah, he's going to pay it with the rye. And that ends the hiring phase. And what we're going to do is we're going to stay playing at about this level because this is where most of the action is. And we have all these different workers that do different things. Player 1 has 1 ingredient card now. He does not need water, and that's a constant effect. He doesn't need water to do anything. So he's going to go ahead and he's going to grab... See, he doesn't want to grab just the green because that's only really effective on a couple of cards and for making an American whiskey. But then again, if he doesn't need water... Nope, he's going to go ahead and grab the green. He's going to grab the rye. Take all 3 of them. He will pass the barley to his opponent. His opponent has to then choose 1 card and discard it. He is going to go ahead, seeing that he just bought the rye, attempt to stifle him, and discard the barley. We will replenish the field. It is now player two's turn. Player two has 3. He can effectively bottle both of his whiskeys, but knowing that his opponent has no. Doesn't matter. He didn't take that card. So he's going to go ahead and he's going to spend the 3. He's going to discard this guy to the bottling plant. Becomes activated. And these are now both bottled whiskeys. He has an Irish and a Scotch whiskey. So he now has the ability to sell 2 bottles here, or maybe next round he can take the Irish and the Scotch and Irish and blend it if he has 1, but he doesn't have any ingredients cards, so he can't do that yet, for 4 blended, and then he could jump here for the lead on the game. We'll see if we get that far. It is now player two's turn. Player two has 3 rye, which really doesn't let him do much of anything. He does have, however, Frank Stone, who is a really good card. He doesn't have to discard a worker. He's going to go ahead and he's going to use the black market because Frank Stone has that ability of the Financer, and he's going to take the top 3 ingredient cards and put them into his hand. He doesn't have to give anything to his opponent by using this ability, so he's got now 2 water, which doesn't really matter. She's got 2 water and 3 rye, excuse me, and 1 maize, which he can make American whiskey now. Turn passes to player 2, who is going to go ahead and use Tito De Nova, who selects an opponent and takes one of their workers in exchange, and he gives them this card face down as a Mike Mellon. So he's going to go ahead and he's going to grab Alex Pitt, who's the guy who lets you make whiskey without water. And that's his action for the turn. It is now player 1's turn, and player 1 still has the ability to make the whiskey if he so pleases. And that is exactly what he's going to do. He's going to go ahead and discard a worker. He's going to discard Sean Evans, and after performing an action with this worker, you're allowed to perform an additional action in the same turn. So he's going to go ahead and use Sean, discarding Sean. He's going to discard 1 rye for the cost, 1 maize for the red ingredient, 1 water for the blue ingredient, and 1 rye for the green ingredient. This will be flipped over. He ends up with distilled American whiskey. Then he is going to take advantage of Sean's ability and take his second action, which in this instance is going to be grabbing 3 barley. He has 2 ingredient cards in his hand. He's going to pass the green one, which is rye, to his opponent. His opponent had no cards in his hand, so he can't discard. We will then replenish this field. It is player 2's turn. Player 2 now has 1 ingredient card, which is enough to let him blend whiskey. He will... Oh, and because he has Joe Redneck lessens the cost of using the mixing plant or the bottling plant by 1. He will use Mike Mellon, discard, to activate the mixing plant. He's going to mix the Scotch in the Irish whiskey. To make 4 bottles of blended whiskey. That ends his activation for the turn. Turn will pass to player 1, who has three barley and a water. He no longer has the gentleman who lets him use water, so he's going to go with spending activate 1 cash, the 2 ingredient requirements to make Scotch or Irish. I haven't made up my mind yet which. I haven't looked. If you look up here, you got Scotch, Scotch, and Scotch. So he's definitely going to go with the Scotch. He's going to make Scotch. And he's going to discard a Mike Mellon to do that. Okay. Play passes to player 2, who is going to take 2 bottles of blended whiskey. He's going to spend 1 and discard his driver to meet the requirements for that card. And he will end up with 5 points. He is now winning this game. Play passes to player 2. He has Frank Stone in the Mayor. So he's going to go ahead and grab 3 ingredient. He has no ingredients in his hand, so he has nothing to pass to his opponent. He will then replenish the field and let the turn pass to his opponent. His opponent has no ingredients in hand, so he doesn't really have any money to spend. So he is going to go ahead and grab, he's going to grab the 2 water because they're more valuable. And then play will pass to player 2. Player 2 has 3 water in hand. So he is going to, he's effectively going to end this turn. He has 2 distilled liquors in his hand. He's going to use the Mayor to go to the bottling plant, shut it down. He needs to spend 4 to make 2 bottles of whiskey. He will spend 4 using 2 water. Those become his 2 bottles of whiskey. His 2 waters get discarded. The Mayor is his worker. The Mayor's ability is every player pays you 1 cash, not ingredients cards. They actually pays cash. So if they haven't visited the marketplace and used the marketplace's ability of discarding cards or putting cards face down, they have no cash. If they cannot play, eliminate a worker. Alex Pitt is the worker that player 2 has in his hand or in his worker pool, and he's eliminated. So that ends the city phase. Player 1's prestige points, player 2's prestige points. We have three, And 8 is 11, plus 2 is 13. 5 and 5 is 10, plus 8 is 18. Player 2 wins. Thanks for watching. I hope that this was helpful for you in understanding 1919, the Noble Experiment. If you have any questions, please let us know. I'll do my best to find out. I'll talk to Black Monk, do whatever it takes to get you the answers that you want to have. Thanks for watching. Have a good day.